Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a series review on Carnival Row. So before I head into my thoughts and feelings on this series review of Carnival Row, a quick disclaimer: I do not plan on having any type of spoilers in this video. My intent and purpose with this video is, if you have not watched the show, this is just kind of a video to maybe get other people interested in it, if it sounds like your cup of thing, and yeah, whether or not you're going to like it or enjoy it. So yeah, no spoilers. I'm definitely going to stay as far away from that as possible. So what do you need to know about Carnival Row? Carnival Row is a show that only had 2 seasons, you guys, even though it was planned out. I think back when season 1 came out, I think the producers were saying they wanted the show to run for like about 5 seasons, but then the COVID pandemic happened and all hell kind of broke loose. And yeah, the show unfortunately was a casualty of all of this. And yeah, it sadly only had the 2 seasons, but I do think it had a relatively satisfying conclusion, that things did get wrapped up and there wasn't like no cliffhangers, at least. But yeah, this was a 2 season show airing on Amazon Prime, starred Orlando Bloom and Cara Delevingne, amongst other people. And what the show, let me kind of read my synopsis here. The show is set in a Victorian era like fantasy world, following a human detective and a female fairy as they fight against a corrupt and brutal system. um, I, I I have a lot of mixed feelings about this show. I think the very first season was, I think for the most part, pretty well done. I loved the first season. I really enjoyed the characters and the direction all their stories took. More than anything, I loved the fantasy world element of this show, because this is a world. It looks Victorian like, with some kind of different nuances in there. So it almost has a historical fiction kind of aesthetic to it. But yeah, it does not take place in like our traditional kind of world. It is definitely more of a fantasy world, but a fantasy world inspired heavily by our world, I think, especially just how things are kind of divided up, how territories are divided up and whatnot. And yeah, this world is inhabited by fairies and centaurs and fauns, and other kind of weird, wacky creatures that are rather Lovecraftian in nature, if you will, you guys. So you have humans versus like fairy kind type of creatures and whatnot, is essentially what this story boils down to. And I think the first season, like I said, I think the first season was very well done. I just really liked everything about that first season. And then, like I said, the COVID pandemic happened, and that kind of, I think, ruined a lot of the plans and setup that the creators wanted to do and take this show. So when season 2 came around, which was just recently, season 2, even though I still liked season 2 for what it was, season 2 was definitely a bit of a hot mess in places and a little bit inconsistent in places, and definitely very frustrating in places, especially with where some of the character relationships go, and it just didn't feel really natural or well handled at times. So it is definitely hard to kind of recommend how I would recommend this show to people, because I think it's definitely worthwhile with season 1, because season 1 definitely has a lot. There's like there's a really wonderful murder mystery aspect to the first season, because our main character, one of our main characters, Philo, played by Orlando Bloom. Philo is a human detective, and there's a series of rather brutal, gruesome murders that happen, and he kind of figures there's like a serial killer, if you will, or some sort of crazy creature out there killing a bunch of people, and this creature is targeting both fae kind and humans alike. So that's where Orlando Bloom's character comes into play. He's the detective trying to figure out this murder mystery throughout the entirety of season 1. And I loved that angle. And season two that whole element is kind of gone, and instead what season 2 turns into is definitely a big kind of almost like political thriller, almost, if you will. It definitely turns very heavily political. There's definitely a lot of parallels to like our real world and whatnot. Yeah, it gets very, very heavily political. Our characters now are kind of in essentially a war zone where they're fighting for their lives, and the future of the Fae kind is at risk and whatnot, and the characters have to reclaim what is theirs, you know. So there is just such a weird divisive divide there, if you will, between season 1 and 2, what they're kind of exploring to some extent. It feels like it just kind of jumps all of a sudden. Whereas if there were multiple seasons to build up to what season 2 was, I think season 2 would have succeeded quite a bit better, if that makes sense. Some other things that I like about the show, I do like how the show just looks. It's an absolutely beautiful looking show. I love the look of this fantasy world. It's very distinct and unique, I think. The people who inhabit it, the characters that inhabit it, I adore the costuming. The costuming is just absolutely gorgeous, I think, and you get a really good sense of the characters within these clothes. They feel inhabited. The world overall just feels so inhabited in, I think. I also just absolutely freaking love the makeup design on this show, because once again, you have people who look like fairies, you have people who look like centaurs or fauns or whatever. So there's a heavy amount of makeup going on this show, and it's all, I think for the most part, it's all practical. It's all practically done, and there's not really too much in the way of CGI. Now, like I said earlier, there are like some Lovecraftian looking type creatures that inhabit this world, and that's where you do get your CGI characters, and that can be a little wonky. Sometimes the CGI on those creatures can be a little wonky, but yeah, as far as just other characters, it's all very practical, and I love that. The fairies, especially their wings, I think the wings, because at times they are definitely CGI, especially when the fairies are flying around, but when they're just kind of chill and relaxed and their wings are just hanging down their back, I think that is a real part of the costume design and the makeup design, and it's so well done. It really looks like there's like wings on these characters and whatnot. And then yeah, like the fairies, they have like a design within their ear. They don't have like the traditional pointy ears. They have like some other little design kind of going on in their ear, like kind of ridging in their ear. And then yeah, like the characters, like the fawn type characters. I love the horn design and how that's kind of brought into like the eye area and then curved over into the ear and whatnot, and then how like the actor's natural hair is kind of through there, you know. I love the design of the fawns with the horns and whatnot. Yeah, the costuming and makeup is just superb on this show, I think. And another thing, this show is something that's original and unique. It's not adapted by anything. There's just so many things out and about nowadays that are adapted from something. There's not really too much originality and creativity, I feel like, in Hollywood anymore. And yeah, Carnival Row, even though it has some highs and lows to it, the thing is, at least it's a unique original creation, which I appreciated. And then something that may be very hit or miss with audiences. This show, as I kind of was briefly mentioning earlier, this show, even though it's a fantasy world, it's tackling very similar concepts and issues and struggles that our real world faces. Um, but what it's doing, it's tackling these issues by using this fantasy world, you know, as kind of this escape. So yeah, the show is tackling things like racism and prejudice, um, misogyny, homophobia, xenophobia, you know, all of these various different ideas, like in our world, are being tackled in this fantasy world, but yet just through this fantasy lens. I think what some viewers struggle with this show is that the show at times can be very heavy handed with its metaphors, to the point that it might just be a little ridiculous and too much, you know. Like I said, the show is dealing quite heavily with racism and prejudice, because it's a world very much about humans versus fae kind. And so yeah, instead of it being like in our world, you know, this fight between just races and peoples and countries and whatnot. Yeah, this world is tackling this more thing here with fantasy, you know. So kind of leave that up to you, your own personal taste when it comes to shows. Do you not appreciate a show that's very heavy-handed with its metaphors and thematic images and whatnot? Because some of the stuff going on in the show you just may not like, or it may just be kind of ridiculous to you and just too much and eye rolling inducing. But yeah, if you're fine with the heavy handed nature, if you're willing to kind of go with that, then you'll probably be fine with what's going on. And I think what the show's also dealing quite heavily with, it's a show, when you kind of think about both seasons, it's a show about how we, or how these characters, I should say, how these characters define themselves and how others define them. It's definitely a character exploration of self discovery. What you should do for yourself, what you need to do for yourself rather than doing for others. And then occasions where maybe you do need to do things for others. What is the greater good at times. And yeah, the show, it's about love and sacrifice and willing to do the right thing when action is called for and needed, rather than maybe sitting to the side. So yeah, I'm just going to run down some of these characters really quickly. Orlando Bloom plays the character of Rycroft Philostrate, or Philo as he tends to go by on this show. I honestly forgot that his first name was Rycroft. Nobody hardly ever calls him Rycroft in this show. It's always Philo. I was thrilled to see Orlando Bloom on this show. I have been in love with Orlando Bloom since The Lord of the Rings, you guys, and Pirates of the Caribbean. I freaking love Orlando Bloom. He kind of disappeared there for a while, kind of after those movies, and he did a few other little things, like Kingdom of Heaven and Elizabethtown and whatnot. But then he just kind of disappeared. So I was really thrilled to see Orlando Bloom on this show. I love him. This was such a great character for him to play. I think it just really allowed Orlando Bloom to be like, hey, I'm a good actor. I can deal with a bunch of different stuff. I can deal with kind of a little bit of comedy, a lot of drama, some action sequences. He was just so great in this show, I think. And yeah, the character of Philo, just so fascinating. Because he definitely has his own unique background and history that's explored quite heavily in season 1, more so than season 2. There's like secrets and things that he's hiding about himself. And so yeah, the murder investigation really puts him in an awkward, sticky situation at times, where he has to kind of come to terms with who he is. But yeah, Philo, I love that character. We have Cara Delevingne, who plays Vignette Stonemoss. Vignette is as a fairy. She's tough. She's badass. You definitely get the idea that she's been hardened by life. She's been hardened by life. Life has been cruel and unjust and unfair to her. And she and Philo, Vignette and Philo, they have a past and a history that gets explored about halfway through that first season. And yeah, what exactly is kind of the thing going on there between them, and can they overcome that at all? Because they're kind of your primary kind of love interest in this show. That you're rooting for them to get together and make amends and make things work. And then we have Tamsin Merchant, who plays Imogen Spurnrose. I adore Tamsin Merchant, you guys. Oh my god. I loved her in The Tudors. Anybody else love her in The Tudors? Oh my god. So yeah, Tamsin Merchant was another actor I was excited to see on this show. Imogen, oh my god. Imogen, she's human. She's spoiled. She's pampered, but her and her brother, they have fallen on some hard times. Things are not going exactly according to plan. Their nice, quiet, privileged life is kind of crumbling a little bit, so they have to concoct some ways. Okay, how can we get some wealth back, or else we're going to lose our nice little privileged life here. So I think Imogen's character is kind of one of the most fascinating. Who she is in season 1 versus who she is in season 2. She definitely goes through a complete flip of character, which I think for the better, definitely. Yeah, Imogen has kind of been conditioned to hate the Fae. Since she is a wealthy, privileged woman, she has definitely been conditioned to hate the Fae, look down on them, treat them as servants and whatnot. But then that's when the character of Agreus Estrayon enters her life, played by David Gaiazzi. Agreus, he's a fawn. He's a fawn. The thing is, though, if you haven't gotten the idea through this video, the Fae kind, they do not live lives of wealth and privilege at all. That is strictly like entirely the human class, and the Fae are all kind of put into this corner of society on this little place called Carnival Row. Hence why this show is called Carnival Row. All of the Fae, for the most part, live on this stretch of road called Carnival Row. But the thing is, Agreus comes into Imogen's life. Agreus, he's a fawn, but he's a very wealthy, privileged fawn, and he moves like right next door to Imogen and her brother. So the character of Agreus, he has a wonderful, interesting backstory that gets explored too. And over the course of the very first season, Agreus and Imogen start getting closer together, and start understanding, hey, humans and Fae kind, we don't have to sit and be separated. Why do we separate ourselves? There's so much that we can learn from each other and benefit from each other rather than spurning everybody. So yeah, Imogen and Agreus is definitely kind of your other love story that's going on in this show. Yeah, they're like the interspecies relationship. Another character we have Simon McBurney, who plays Runyon Millworthy. Millworthy, I really adored his character. He's kind of almost, he almost sometimes comes across as a bit of the heart of the show on occasion. Just all the horrible things that he kind of goes through on occasion, and kind of the awkward place and position he's placed in season 2 and whatnot. I really liked Simon McBurney's portrayal of Millworthy in this show. Millworthy is, I think, an easily likable character, and he has kind of a connection to Philo and whatnot. I really liked the direction his character took by season 2, because his character definitely has a lot more to do in season 2 than in season 1, because he's barely even in season 1, I feel like. But yeah, I liked the Millworthy character. As far as some other like bigger named actors that pop up on this show, Jared Harris is in the show. You guys, Jared freaking Harris is on this show. He plays like the chancellor of this world. It's a great performance, I think. I feel like at the same time, Jared Harris was vastly underused. It's like, you have Jared Harris, use the man. He was so vastly underused on this show, I think, but at the same time, he was used really well, I think, and what his character served in the overall scheme of things. And then we also have Indira Varma. Yeah, guys, I love Indira Varma. Indira Varma, her character plays the wife of Jared Harris's chancellor. There's definitely some interesting stuff going on there with her. Alice Krieg, you guys, I loved Alice Krieg. She is a Fae as well in this world, and yeah, once again, another underused character, but I liked Alice Krieg. And then Joanne Whaley pops up on this show. She pops up in season 2. She definitely serves a very interesting point of view and perspective in season 2 that gets really wild, and it's definitely very heavy-handed there with Joanne Whaley's character. But yeah, that's pretty much it, you guys. I'm sorry if I'm kind of flying through this review. Like I said, I'm trying to avoid like spoilers and stuff, and it's kind of hard to do. But yeah, you guys, in the comments below, have you guys seen this show? If you have seen the show, did you like it? Did you hate it? Has this video persuaded you to check out the show? I do. I, for the most part, liked this show. I do think season 1 is the far superior show, the best done and handled, because season 2, you can definitely kind of feel kind of the inconsistency and kind of randomness that's kind of happening, and sometimes season 2 can be very, very frustrating. But I did find season 2 to still have a satisfying conclusion, and it definitely did not have any sort of cliffhanger. And yeah, where the characters are all left at the end of season 2, it felt very believable. I really appreciated kind of where the characters were left at the very end. Very believable and different, I think, rather than kind of what I was kind of maybe thinking the direction would be for the finale. But yeah, I personally liked this show. Yes, some hits and misses there, especially with season 2, but I think it's still worthwhile if you're looking for a unique, original fantasy world that's not adapted by anything. Yeah, a battle and a struggle between a corrupt system and humans versus Fae and whatnot. I think you might like this. So you guys, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye, guys.